Welcome back to Trots TV. Time for 6 Things We've Learned. Robbie Morris is back with me. Robbie, we were going to have a look at what's been happening throughout the year because we're getting close towards Christmas and the end of the year. But with what happened at Ballarat last week, I thought we might go back and have a look at what happened and give our thoughts on that, and also what effect, if it has, in New South Wales. In normally 6 things, we sort of bounce topics off one another. What I thought we'd do here is come up with 6 points. We'll talk on each of those 6 points, and that's how we'll run the segment today. So firstly, the lead-up. Now, Robbie, 6 of the 10 entrants, once it was deemed sulkies from a new batch of the UFOs were too wide and banned from use. Adam Hamilton, or 6 horses were then scratched from the race. Adam Hamilton, he reported that Emma Stewart had planned to use the new sulky on the 4 of her runners, so that's why the 4 of them came out. David Aiken was going to do the same on his 2. Trainers opted to scratch on the basis they didn't have sufficient warning of what was going to take place and they couldn't find suitable replacements. Now, the background to it is that the chairman of stewards, Neil Condor, was notified by email last Wednesday that there was some intelligence out that there were sulkies that were being used, some UFO sulkies that were too wide. Condor instructed his compliancy steward then to go and look at them, or to, when he was next working, to check the gigs. Now, apparently he worked on the Thursday meeting at Melton, checked them, everything was okay. He didn't work on the Friday. There were 2 meetings across New South Wales. Now, Saturday he's turned up at the Ballarat meeting. He's made some checks. Some of the gigs were outside the 1300. Now, that's unfortunate for the club, and the decision was made to scratch the 6 horses. Massive shock, and no doubt you would have been watching and seeing what was happening, and it was a bit of a funny Saturday night.
Yeah, it was. I had drivers in every race here, and I actually come off the track and David Watson, the racing manager, went past him and he said, "What about how they scratched 6 out of the Ballarat Cup?" I thought he was G'ing up. It's a tricky situation. Obviously, the trainers have got every right to stand up for what they believe in, and obviously there's bits and pieces that we don't know about it, because I think if you ask a few people, Emma Stewart and Clayton Tonkin said their gig was checked on Friday night and went around in the last race on Friday night, won the last race, and no one said a word. 24 hours later, they're at Ballarat and they can't use their gig on their best horses, which that's what you buy the gigs for. You want them on your better horses. So it's very sad for the club, but yeah, it's just one of them things.
What about the welfare of the horses? Because that's one of the comments that's come up in the conversations, especially with Emma and David Aiken after what happened. They say it comes first. Now, other trainers opted on the night, when told that the sulkies were too wide, they used different gigs, and it was to the detriment of their horse. Also, Emma Stewart didn't want to risk injuring her horses using new gigs. And considering, we're talking about horses like Restrepo, who's had serious injuries in the past. We're talking about Philadelphia Man, who's been off the scene for a very long time. I can understand that. And from a horseman's point of view, I guess that's a pretty important thing.
I definitely think I've driven many horses where there's a flat tyre in the race before and you just go, "Oh, can I borrow your gig?" Whack it on. Next minute they hit the wheels, they pull. I know I drove one for Tappy not long ago. He had a flat tyre or something like that and he had to borrow another gig, and it was a fairly long gig but wasn't long enough. Hit the wheels, choked, fell, and we were lucky that night that the horse never really hurt himself. But you don't want horses like Philadelphia Man and Restrepo and those sort of horses going through that pain, especially when they've got big races coming up. So full credit to them for caring for their horses first.
And how, when we're, for people watching this who don't deal with horses on a daily basis, how important is it when we're, that you're using you're regularly using the same gig on the horse, so you know where everything should be? Well,
that's exactly right. Like when you're working many horses, you sort of you give and take a little bit, but like they would have knew that Restrepo's always in hole 4. Philadelphia Man's a bit longer, so put him right out.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's all these different little angles, and one saddle, all of a sudden the saddle's half an inch higher than what it was last week. They can hit then too. So, yeah, I can understand where they were coming from, and it's just disappointing that it happened on the night.
What about communication? Because this is a big talking point. Why wouldn't stewards contact the participants by text, alert them to the issues, tell them to go out and measure their sulkies? Another breakdown in communication on the night was that between the chief steward and also the CEO of Harness Racing Victoria, John Anderson. Now, New South Wales participants need to know that it's a different setup in Victoria to New South Wales. Obviously, in New South Wales, the CEO of the sport, John Dummersey, sits above a number of divisions, including the stewards division, and so therefore there's a boss of the stewards. But in Victoria, totally different setup where the three codes, the greyhounds, the gallops, and the stewards, that they all sit in one pool and they report to Sal Perner. There is obviously they work for HRV. Now, John Anderson said he could have gone in as the CEO of the sport and overruled the decision, but that would have put him in jeopardy of losing his job, because he's gone in and made a decision that he could make on the night, but there would have been some ramifications. So I guess my point here is the communication of the stewards to the participants is not good, and Gavin Lang was really eloquent in what he said during the Sky coverage on Saturday night. It feels like we're not working together. They're on one side of the wall and we're on the other, and we've got to work together. Yeah,
it's very hard. A lot of people, and it always happens, stewards are there to do a job. They're in there to enforce the rules and all that sort of stuff, but as far as I wasn't there on the night and just talking to people that were there, I do think the stewards just, to me, looking an outsider looking in, and I'm sure Gavin and Emma and Clayton and Akey and all them feel the same, it sort of sounds to me like the stewards went, shh, we'll sneak around here, bang, got yous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
that's how it looks.
That's not right, because you got to give people fair opportunity. Like if they rang Akey or Clayton or Emma the day before and said, look, we're not happy with them gigs. They're a little bit wider. Can you bring another 4 gigs? Yeah, no worries. I'm sure they would have figured something out.
That's my next question to you. Like, how long? Like, with one fast work, can we get the gig changed?
You said Wednesday you got the email.
Yep.
Wednesday afternoon he rings. Like, that's 3 days before. They probably would have had a fast work on Wednesday, most of them.
Yep.
But there's no dramas. We've just taken them down on the Thursday, putting them in another gig, sprinting them up for a furlong, just to make sure that they're not going to hit, and then them gigs would have been used. It's a problem that could have been cared for straight away. You'll probably find that Akey and them already know what spare gigs at home they don't hit. So they probably wouldn't have even had to do that. But they didn't have that choice because they were already there.
They got to the racetrack.
They were at the racetrack. To me, it sort of looked like they were sneaking up on them. And I know you said the CEO can't really make them decisions. Well, I think he can. Walk in and say, listen, guys, this is ridiculous. It's a Ballarat Cup. Worry about it tomorrow. Like, I don't know.
I guess the argument then is, if I'm using a gig that is within the rules and I run second and you beat me ahead, I go into the steward's room, well, hang on, he's using something that is illegal.
But then what happened on the Friday night that Emma Stewart said that her horse won, they measured it and won the last race? Yeah. The bloke that ran second in that, is he blown up? Obviously the steward didn't...
Well, the connections didn't know.
It just looks...
But once it's out in the open, and once everyone knows, it's probably harder then, because you've beaten a half head. Oh, well, you throw the toys out of the pot.
And I don't, to be quite honest, that much wider. I don't think it's going to make all that much difference to me.
But it's outside the rules.
But it's exactly right. It's outside the rules, but I think it could have been handled a lot better.
What about the club? And you mentioned the club when we first started talking about this. I felt really sorry for Ballarat. They are a really good club in Victoria. They do a fantastic effort with their feature races, and to put in all the promotion they had. They had a cracking field. And all of a sudden, 6 horses out of the Cup. People who go into the trots for maybe once a year, they turn up locals. They turn up. Oh, what's this? There's 4 horses.
They might not come back.
Not come back. And I know HRV have given them some money to make sure that their Christmas meeting with the sprint is a good race. But I felt really sorry for the team there, because there would have been a lot of dirty people who would have been dirty at the club, not knowing the situation when it was really not the club's fault.
I've been to Ballarat probably the last 2-3 years, because they run the semi-finals to the Breeders' Crown there. And it's a great club. The track's always in super order. The people are always nice. Their whole committee does a really good job. But yeah, it would have been heartbreaking. Like, I know myself, Breeders' Crown semis are a big night for them, but Ballarat Cup's the Ballarat Cup. You know what I mean? The whole town looks forward to it. It's just really sad for them, but I'm sure they'll pick up. They'll have a good night at the sprint, and there'll be another Ballarat Cup next year.
point 5 I want to make, spoke with Reid Sanders
Yep.
about New South Wales and what it means for New South Wales. No issues. Reid's been in contact with the owners of UFO gigs in New South Wales and he reports that there's no issues. We don't have the wider gigs here in New South Wales, so that's a good thing. Obviously, it's, every state's got to be checked now, and every UFO gig has to be measured.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I've driven in quite a few UFO gigs. They're quite comfy, but they always do stick out a little bit because the majority of them are offset. But I don't think the ones that are obviously a little bit wider, I don't think they are offset. I think they're just a touch wider. But yeah, exactly, the stewards have got to go around and check every gig, and see if there's any more out there. And I'm sure if there is a problem, they'll rectify it.
Last point, and that's the race itself, because we had the field of 4. Chris Alford, fantastic drive, and goes to show why he's one of the best in the country. No doubt, if you've had a chance to look at the replay, you would have seen just how well he did. But Ricky May, he's won plenty of New Zealand Cups, and I know he would like that drive again, but that was one of the poorer featured race drives that I've seen in Australia for quite some time. He just thought that he was on the best horse and was going to win whenever he pulled out, and Chris Alford sold him the dummy and beat him.
Yeah, well, there's Puppet's Puppet. He's just a star. He can win on a CO at Horsham. He can win on a green circuit horse. But Ricky should have just, as soon as they settled, even if he had to sit outside him, that's the only place he could be, because they were, with 4 horses in the race, and I've said it before on the segment, it's all about mathematics. And when you go the first mile over a 2-mile race or a long-distance race, when you go the first mile in 4 or 5 in a free-for-all, you know they're going to rattle off a quick half. And Puppet got away with some cheap sectionals early, and then Ricky let Uncle Wingnut come out in front of him, with no disrespect to Uncle Wingnut, but before there was 4 in it, he was 300 to 1.
Yeah.
That was the last horse you wanted to be following.
Yeah.
He should have just been up outside him.
Did what he did last week to Chris and me.
Exactly. I don't know. We all know Chris and me is probably a better horse to I'm Causing Terror. No disrespect to I'm Causing Terror. But he sat outside him and bashed him the week before.
Yeah.
And he was too scared to go and sit outside Causing Terror.
I feel sorry for the people who bet pre-post and then had to cop deductions and everything like that, because obviously he went around as a 104 favourite. The Terror to Love. And
what did they go the half in? The
last half?
It was
53.9, I think.
Like 53. And to his credit, at the top of the lane, he was spotting I'm Causing Terror 2 lengths.
Yep.
And got beat a neck.
Yeah.
So he's probably gone 53 flat. And then
after what he'd done the week before, and all of a sudden Australia had gone, well, he can race in Australia. We can see what he can do.
I said it the week before, put him into the race.
Yeah, and then he comes out the week later and all the gloss that he'd had put on him.
Sits 1-1 in a 4-horse race.
Yeah. All right, well, that's 6 things we learned about the Ballarat Cup. We'll be back again next week to have a chat about what's happening in harness racing.
This program was brought to you by Harness Racing New South Wales and the New South Wales Harness Racing Club. This has been a Harbour Television production.